Greetings and welcome. We are in Senior English A, and we are finishing up now our comments regarding Beowulf. You should be in your packet on page 5, and I'm going to make some observations that are specific to Beowulf 2. Specific to Beowulf 2, all right? Now, Beowulf is an epic poem which tells the story of the great warrior Beowulf, but we call this an Anglo-Saxon epic. From this epic poem, we derive what we will sometimes call the Anglo-Saxon code of behavior. Now that you have finished reading all of the different sections from your hymnal of Beowulf, you kind of get a sense. Did you notice that at the end? How the tongue lashing occurred to some of the chaps who ran away? Did you notice that, Mr. Rothblutner? The old, how dare you, right? Okay, the old guilt, let's lay the guilt on them and all of that, okay? All of that is going to be a part of this Anglo-Saxon code. But let's ask the question, Ms. Mueller, what exactly is the Anglo-Saxon code? And the best place to go to find that are, for your notes, the speeches of the Beowulf poem. Not the action of the Beowulf poem, the speeches of the Beowulf poem. Now, Mr. Nelson, oftentimes, high school anthologies will put in the action of the poem, but rarely the speeches of the poem, which is why I've had to copy a little bit for you so that you can get a sense of what's going on. I'm now with you on page 5 of your packet. Beowulf has defeated Grendel in the first section. And then we're told Grendel's mother will appear under cover of night. She will only eat one of the warriors, not Beowulf's warriors, Hrothgar's warriors. His name is Aesir. And she will eat that warrior, and then she'll run away. Beowulf is called the next morning, and we're told he comes tramping into the hall, and he asks the king, how's it going? To which the king will respond, and now I'm with you right at the beginning of page 5, Hrothgar spoke, the Lord of the Scyldings. Are you with me all? Page 5, top of page 5. Ask not of pleasure. Pain is renewed for the Danish people. Aesir is dead, the old man, the old fart king. Oh, everything is terrible. And now he's going to go on for a while talking about how terrible everything is. He was my comrade, closest of counselors, my shoulder companion, as side by side. We fought for our lives in the welter of war. Oh, Hrothgar, the old king. He's a whiner. He's sad. Oh, I don't know what to do. Everything is terrible. And he goes on and on for quite some time. We'll not read it all. We'll get to line 895, though. That's where you want to actually annotate your packet page here. And at 895, put a little star there or whatever. And if you're working in red ink, it's obviously easier to see this. Beowulf spoke, son of Ecgtheow. By the way, did you notice, Mr. Durant, how important lineage is in this poem? So almost always you're told who the father was. Notice here, son of Ecgtheow. So you've always got this lineage thing going on. Notice at the end of Beowulf in part 3, one of Beowulf's greatest lamentations or regrets is that he does not have a son. Right, he doesn't have a son, someone to pass on his name to. Notice here, Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, speaks. What is Beowulf going to say to the old man king who is whining about losing Aesir? Oh, we thought everything was good and now it's not again. Oh, right? Let's take a look. You might put a note to yourself on your paper that this is the Anglo-Saxon code in just a few lines. Why your textbook company would choose to leave these lines out of the poem, I do not know. Because this is in many ways the heart of the Beowulf poem, along with the lines that I'll speak to in a moment. Look what he says. Sorrow not, brave one. Take a look at how he says this. It's the young kid who is kind of bucking up. Is that a good way to say it, Mr. Keeley? Bucking up the old king, right? In other words, he says to the old king, enough with the crying, enough with the sorrow, enough with the tears. Sorrow not, brave one. Look what he says next. Better for man to avenge a friend than much to mourn. Put it in your own words. I'm working at now level 1. What did he just say? Revenge is good. Revenge is good. Somebody jacks your best friend? Don't sit here whining about it. Let's go kill him. Come on, let's go. I mean, really? We don't have time to sit here messing around, whining about things. In other words, you almost get this sense that Beowulf's going to say to the old man like this, enough of it already. Right. And Hrothgar's kind of sitting there as the great old king. It's the young man, Beowulf, who says, enough with the crying. We're not crying. We're not wimps. Key. We're not wimps. We don't cry. Sorrow not, brave one. Better, look what he says is better. Better for a man to avenge a friend than much to mourn. All men must die. Let him who may win glory ere death. What does he say?
The one that died will be remembered.
Everyone dies. The question isn't, are you going to die? Everyone dies. The question is, do you gain, what is that G word? And if you go back real quickly to your hymnal, and you look at the very final lines of Beowulf, guess what word is mentioned in the last 3 lines of the poem? It's this word. This word is repeated over and over again in the Beowulf epic. What is glory? Let's put it in our notes. What is glory? We use this term. What does this term mean? And what I find fascinating in all high schools I've ever attended, almost without exception, you walk into the building, and at some point in the building, usually in a very visible spot, there will be some kind of glass casing where there will be certain pictures on cardboard of athletes who are constituted as the most celebrated. Now, what's fascinating about that very concept is that it's accepted within our culture so readily. Have you thought about this? Every single one of the people that are pictured on those cardboards from way, way back, every single one of them did not birth themselves. Would you agree with me? Every single one of them came from other people. Would you agree with me? Parents of some kind. Would you agree? To that degree, they don't get on that cardboard without some kind of parent. Would you agree with me? Every single one of those people had teachers from the time they were 5 years old and on. Right? If they don't have those teachers, they don't get enough education to be student athletes. Would you agree with me? Every one of those people had coaches who worked very close with them to allow them to develop skill sets so that they could be considered the best and then therefore put on. Every one of those people were a part of a team, even in individual sports, a part of a team. Why isn't the whole team photographed? Why just one of the whole team photographed? And some of you are already thinking, yeah, hey, yeah, that's right. Why isn't the whole team? I mean, come on, no matter how bad the team is, if one individual is celebrated, shouldn't the whole team be celebrated? That's not fair. Wait a minute. The Anglo-Saxons are the early English. The English are the early Americans. And of course, your legacy is American. What my point is here is that from way, way back, the concept of glory is central to understanding Western culture. One individual is drawn out. What does glory mean, though? Why put them on a piece of cardboard? Here, why? What's the point of that? What are we trying to do you think? What is glory? To be remembered. Remembered by who? See, this is interesting because already you can play this strange game of looking at people in that trophy case and going, who are those people? Well, now that's strange. Even in a small town high school in the middle of nowhere, already our celebrated athletes are being forgotten. And yet, we continue to do this project. Why? Well, because there's this notion that somehow you will be spoken of. You will be remembered. Notice what Beowulf says to Hrothgar. Everybody's got to die. Let him who may win glory ere death. The number one goal of the Anglo-Saxon warrior is to do something memorable before you go. That's why Beowulf will speak those famous lines in Beowulf 3 at the end of his life to say, hey, before I die, at least you can say I did this, this, and this. I never lied. I never stole. I never killed my own brothers. See, he's repeating what he wants to be repeated, and ultimately, of course, a poem is invented about him that will remind people about who and what he did to be remembered. Notice we'll continue. That guardian, that means treasure, that guardian is best for the noble man when his name survives him. See, isn't that fascinating? There once was an old man named Warland. His name becomes the name of this town. You don't know anything about that cat unless you want to do a little bit of history reading. Those books are out there, by the way. But you still use his name every day if you talk about your town. See how that works? We build buildings and then name them after people. Notice this Anglo-Saxon idea. You must work to somehow have a name that's remembered, to do something that allows you to be remembered. This is a foundational Anglo-Saxon idea, and of course it will become a primary notion of our English heritage and then ultimately our American heritage as well. Then let us rise up, O ward of the realm, and haste us forth to behold the track of Grendel's dam. And I give you pledge, here it comes, the promise. All soldiers must make the promise before they go into battle, you see. I give you this pledge. She, Grendel's dam, shall not in safety escape to cover, to earthy cavern or forest fastness or gulf of ocean, go where she may. This day with patience endure the burden of every woe, as I know you will. End of little speech. It's not a very long speech, but it's, what would we call it when a coach gives this kind of speech? It's kind of like what? It's like an inspirational, motivational speech, right? A little pep talk, if you will, in a van down by the river and all of that, you see. And so you got, right? So you've got the speech here, right? Okay, this is the, let's go, let's go. Notice how the king responds. Notice how the king responds. Up sprang the ancient. Right? He gets new energy. Okay, you're right. Gave thanks to God. This is a very religious poem, right? Hrothgar is going to give thanks to God for the heartening words. Do you see how your translator will call Beowulf in this passage? The hero. There it is. That's one of the central notions of the Anglo-Saxon motif as well. The notion of the importance of the hero. Now, if we had more time, we could pause here and ask an intriguing question. Do we still in our culture believe in the idea of the hero? Yeah. The individual who we kind of place in front of the other individuals, and we say, this is the kind of person that you want to emulate, to be like. This is the kind of person that you can look at and say, yeah, that's what I want to be like someday. Do we have that concept anymore of the hero? And if you say, yeah, no, I don't think so. Our culture doesn't play that same game. We have celebrities, but those aren't necessarily heroes. We can look at a celebrity and say, yeah, okay, I follow them on like the net, I read People magazine and stuff about them. But honestly, I don't think that's a life necessarily I would want a child of mine to really imitate. You know what I mean? It's something that, okay, they got money, that would be nice, and they got fame, and that would be okay too. But they seem to have a lot of really screwy problems that I really would not want anyone associated with me to have to endure. To that degree, they're celebrities, but are they heroes? What is the difference in your mind between a celebrity and a hero?
The code.
The code, it's it. Duran has said it, dead on. The notion of the hero is, be like me. This is what I want you to be like. That's the whole point of the epic poem. The epic poem here, Beowulf, is not about killing monsters for entertainment purposes. It's about having the courage to risk your life for the well-being of another person to gain glory. Now, let's point out the obvious. Really? This is pure male. Seriously? So he's come over to fight against Grendel and now Grendel's mom, but the real reason he's doing it is so that he can be, right? So he can be the hero. So everybody go, ooh, look at Beowulf. What a man he is. Typical male. Here we go again. Guys always trying to make themselves look like... And then all of a sudden we start thinking about sports in America, and we realize how much sports in America is really Anglo-Saxon code, right? So for example, notice, any time on television that a game is being advertised, the team is mentioned, but inevitably one or two players always pulled out to be spoken of first, right? Peyton Manning and his Denver Broncos. Oh, sorry for you Bronco fans after the defeat of this past weekend, right? But there is, of course, almost always, correct, some mention first of the hero player and then the rest of the team. This Anglo-Saxon motif is very, very deep in our psyche. It's a foundational part of what makes us in the West who we are. And to that degree, I think it's worthy of at least pointing it out. Let's take a look now at the final page, page 6 of your packet. And it's here that I want to make some real quick observations about what is often referred to as the final speech of Beowulf II. And this is the Hrothgar speech. This, to our knowledge, is the last time Hrothgar ever speaks in the Beowulf epic. Again, I'm not exactly sure why these lines are not contained in your anthology. I mean, this is the heart of the poem. Beowulf has killed Grendel's mom, brought back the arm or the head of Grendel as a trophy. Hrothgar is now ready to speak. I'm with you on page 6 there at roughly line 1151. Are you all with me? 1151. Hrothgar spoke, beholding the hilt the ancient relic whereon was etched an olden record of struggle and strife, the flood, the ravage, the giant race, the rushing deluge of ruin, and death. The hilt of the sword had carvings on it and that kind of thing. That evil kindred were alien to God, but the ruler avenged with the wrath of deep. Then out spoke Hrothgar. Notice, Hefildine's son. So again, we're told about the lineage thing again, right? And all the retainers were silent and still. Again, this poem, Mr. Keeley, is what we call a Propa Dudek. It is instructional. It's didactic. How do you act when the king speaks? Stand still and silent. If you go and talk to your great-grandma or grandpa, if they're still around, they will tell you that when they were children, if they were sitting in a room when an adult walked in, you stood up. You stood until the adult sat down. If you were sitting and there were no chairs, you immediately stood up and you gave the chair to the older person. And then you sat down when the older person told you you could, because you were younger. And you had to show respect. Right? Respect. Notice here, the retainers, the soldiers will show respect. They're silent while the king speaks. What is it that he says? Well may he say, whose judgment is just, recalling to memory the men of the past, that this earl was born of a better stock. Whoa, what's he say? You come from good stock. They're going to say about you long after your death. Whoa, we have a word for this. It's called glory, or fame, right? Your fame, friend Beowulf, is blazoned abroad over the wide ways to every people, and manful, look at the word, manful fashion have you showed your strength, your might, and wisdom. My word I will keep, the plighted friendship we formerly pledged. Long shall you stand as a stay to your people. And then there's an ellipse because it goes on for quite some time. In celebrating Beowulf, basically Hrothgar is saying about Beowulf, you're the man. You're the man. You've done it. You've proved in every way imaginable that you are the man. But that's only the first step in this little speech. Now we're going to get into something interesting. It's almost like old man Hrothgar kind of pauses and muses for a little bit. And he says the following. 'Tis a wondrous marvel how mighty God and gracious spirit bestows on men the gift of wisdom and goodly lands and princely power. He rules over all. He suffers a man of lordly line to set his heart on his own desires, awards him fullness of worldly joy, a fair homeland and the sway of cities, the wide domain of many a realm, an ample kingdom, till, it's amazing, he says, it's amazing how God lets someone grow very powerful, get everything that he or she wants, till, cursed with folly, the thought of his heart take no heed of his end. Uh-oh, what's he saying? You get all this stuff, but you forget what? What's he saying to the young man Beowulf? You're young now. You're a stud now. You are the warrior now. But what? Not for long. This is foundational as well to understanding this poem. The idea is that, of course, you're heroic now and young and strong and all of that. But there's a moment coming in your future when you won't be. When you won't be anymore. Take a look at how he says it. He lives in luxury, knowing not want, knowing no shadow of sickness or age, no haunting sorrow darkens his spirit, no hatred or discord deepens the war. The world is sweet to his every desire, and evil assails not, until in his heart, you might circle the word, pride, overpowering, gathers and grows. The warder slumbers, the guard of his spirit, too sound is that sleep, too sluggish the weight of worldly affairs, too pressing the foe. The archer who looses the arrows of sin. Notice, Mr. Nelson, that almost like a Greek myth, pride is personified as shooting arrows to knock you out, right? Then is his heart pierced. We're not talking about a literal arrow going into his heart. We're speaking in metaphor here, aren't we? Then is his heart pierced under his helm. His soul in his bosom with bitter dart. He has no defense for the fierce assaults of the loathsome fiend. Notice fiend capitalized. What he long has cherished seems all too little. In anger and greed, you might circle the word greed. This is the Anglo-Saxon code of being careful that you don't want to not be generous, right? Once you start getting greedy, bad things happen. And greed, he gives no girding of plated rings, since God has granted him glory and wealth. He forgets the future, unmindful of fate. Notice fate is capitalized. What's that mean? He forgets the future, unmindful of fate. He thinks he's going to be what? Young forever, right? Young forever. In other words, this is an important instructional moment. Old man Hrothgar says, hey, Beowulf, you're a stud now. You're young, you're handsome, you're all those things. But not for long. It doesn't stay forever. It doesn't stay forever. No matter how many Buns of Steel videos you do, no matter how many surgeries you do, right? No matter how many workouts you do, sooner or later, everything, as we've said before, sags and bags. This is just pure Anglo-Saxon instruction here. Take a look at what he says. But it comes to pass in the day appointed, his feeble body withers and fails, death descends, and another seizes his hoarded riches and rashly spends the princely treasure, imprudent of heart. For those of you who know your Judeo-Christian biblical text, this sounds very much like the book of Ecclesiastes that says you work really hard to get all of your money, but then you get old and you die, and somebody else comes in and takes all of the money that you worked so hard to get and spends it in Vegas in one afternoon. Done. Just like that. All that lifetime of money and hard work, and then you got to die. That is what it means to live. That you must, well, let's let Hrothgar finish it. Beloved Beowulf, best of warriors, avoid such evil and seek the good, the heavenly wisdom, and then there it is. Beware of pride. Now for a time you shall feel the fullness and know the glory of strength, but soon, look at what will get you. Sickness or sword shall strip you of might, or clutch of fire, or clasp of flood, or flight of error, or bite of blade, or relentless age, or the light of the eyes shall darken and dim, and death on a sudden, O lordly ruler, shall lay you low. In other words, everyone is mortal. The point of Beowulf 3 is that they needed to show the hero dying. To prove what Hrothgar is saying. It's only a matter of time. Notice Beowulf 3 opens with Beowulf having been on the throne for 50 years. But in the bigger scope of things, 50 years is kind of like 20 seconds. Would you agree with me? When you factor thousands of years, if not millions of years, right? 50 years ain't very long. The point that Hrothgar's making here is, it's just a matter of days before you aren't what you are now. You're old, and it's coming. So don't forget. To make the point, Hrothgar reminds Beowulf he's living what he's speaking. Look what he says. 100 half years, 50 years, I've been head of the ring dates, defending the folk against many a tribe with spear point and sword in the searches of battle, till not one was hostile neath heaven's expanse. But a loathsome change swept over the land, grief after gladness, when Grendel came. In other words, Hrothgar says, Look at me. There was a time when I was just like you, Beowulf. I was young and strong, and I defeated everybody. But then Grendel showed up, and I was already old, and I needed your help to take care of it. What does Beowulf 3 do to kind of prove this? Old man Beowulf starts out to fight against the dragon, remembering, we're told, his ancient fights. He goes out to fight against the dragon. Immediately, all the other guys run away. Beowulf is bit in the neck. He will not defeat the dragon without whose help? He has to have the young kid. Notice the recapitulation. In other words, you're young now, but there will come a moment when you won't be. Who will take care of you in your old age? See, you will take care of the old in your young age, and then you will become old. And then there's a new kind of passing, right? And the idea, of course, is the old must take care of the young, because sooner or later the young must take care of the old, and then themselves become old. See? Which is strange, because normally when you drive by an old fart's home, you don't see yourself there. Other people maybe, but not you. The next time you get behind some old person driving too slow, instead of thinking about what a pain in the rear it is, imagine yourself there, because it's coming. That's the point of this. It's coming. Sooner or later, you're going to be the old fart, and some young kid's going to be treating you with disrespect. And there's the heart of the Anglo-Saxon code. Young people treat old people with respect because someday those young people will be the old people. And there's a need to continue to train young people to have respect because they ain't going to be young forever. You will not be strong and young forever. The poem pointing out mortality is waiting, saying soon. Thank you. Okay, tomorrow when we come back, we'll